والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Before we begin, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this endeavor of ours. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Ya Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us and bless us in the knowledge you have granted us and increase our knowledge. Knowledge is beneficial only insofar as we are willing to apply it, implement it, act upon it. Otherwise, the knowledge can be a curse. It will not be a boon or a blessing, it will be a curse. Is that working? Cannot hear. I don't know, there is a jinn in the mic system here. Always. I am not doing anything. I want to hold it. Can you hear me now? No? You can.
You need to kiss the mic, yeah.
Like that? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, so you can hear me now. Knowledge is a blessing only if we are willing to act upon it. Otherwise, it can be a curse. Just like Iblis, lots of knowledge he had, but he did not act upon it. He disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore he was banished. Allah cast him out of his mercy and now he wants to try to take us with him to hellfire. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever we learn, we do so with the sincere intention to act upon it, inshallah. And today, this Zakat course, it's a course that we should be teaching in 3, 4, 5 sessions, but I'm today just introducing it for you. You may have some questions specific, I will try to answer them. So today I can only give a brief overview of the meaning of Zakah, its status, its purpose, generally how we should apply it, inshallah. Details I cannot provide here, but if you have specific questions, I will answer it, inshallah. One thing very important for us to recognize, Islam is built on 5 pillars. You know, the whole thing is, Islam is compared to a tent. In the desert, you build a tent. Of course, we build tent here in the campsites. We have 5 pillars, one central pole, and then 4 pillars. So the same is Islam as a structure is like a tent built on 5 pillars. The central pole is what? The testimony of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the cornerstone of the entire structure. It is the pivotal foundation of Islam. Our centering our life on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the meaning of Shahada. Then of course, after Shahada comes next in importance is Salah. When Musa alayhi salam was addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told him, Innani ana Allah fa'budni wa aqimis salata li dhikri. I am God. So there is no God beside me, worship me and establish Salah to celebrate my remembrance. So Salah is the next most important thing after somebody testifies that make the Shahada. Immediately Salah becomes obligatory unless he belongs to those categories, cannot pray. In the case of, I am not going to go into details. So Salah is obligatory and Salah was enjoined on the believers in Makkah. in the Mi'raj. That was before Hijrah. Next pillar in Islam is Zakah. We are talking about Zakah now. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Those who perform Zakah. You know, this was, Zakah as a concept was there in Makkah, but as a duty we know, as it is now applied, the detailed form of it was instituted after the Hijrah in the second year of Hijrah. Okay? And of course, in the same year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instituted the fasting of Ramadan, which is the fourth pillar of Islam. And then comes the fifth pillar of Islam. According to many scholars, it was instituted on the 9th year of Hijrah, but there are some who say it was instituted in the 6th year or 7th year. Now, whatever it may be, of course, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed only one Hajj. That's why Imam Ibn al-Qayyim and others say the Hajj was instituted in the 9th year of Hijrah, because it's not possible for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Allah make Hajj obligatory and then he will delay the performance of it. Okay? So anyway, coming to Zakah, Zakah is the most important pillar in Islam, second to Salah. Zakah and Salah joined together in dozens of verses, more than 24 verses in the Quran. The whole concept, the word Zakah and its derivatives, 83 times in the Quran. Now, the beauty of this religion of Islam is every single act of worship in Islam is multidimensional, meaning it has an outward dimension, it has inward dimension. So Zakah, the word Zakah itself, this is the beauty of this religion. The term that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for this religion must signify the multidimensional nature of religion. Religion is not just a formal ritual, it is also experience. We need to experience our faith. We need to internalize our faith. We need to internalize the acts of worship. Then only we can achieve the state of true Iman. This is called experiential knowledge, ma'rifah. Man amila bima alim, allamahu Allahu ma lam ya'lam. Whoever acts upon what he knows, Allah will teach him that which he didn't know. And of course, in Islam, we have a lot of awliyaullah who never read any book, but they have written many, many volumes because Allah taught them experiential knowledge, which they wrote it down in many, many volumes. They did not read books. So where their knowledge came from the experiential. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illuminated their hearts, ideas flow. And I know some of the great scholars, I read, you know what they have written? Amazing. One example is Imam Shah Waliullah Dahlavi. I cannot be but amazed every time I read what he has written, because it's so full of depth of meaning that you cannot really delve. The more you study it, the deeper it is. So anyway, the meaning of zakah, the word zakah in Islam, growth. Idea is, the more you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your wealth will grow. It's a growth, self-development, purification is another meaning. So self-purification, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Scholars say there, zakah means self-purification. So the same word has growth, it has the meaning of flourishing, it has the meaning of self-purification, it has the meaning of blessing, it is the meaning of wholeness. And righteousness, desirable, blessings, and of course, praising. You know, people come to me and Sheikh Abdul Hamid and others for tazkiyah. What are they? To say that this person is a praiseworthy, virtuous person. So that also comes from the word zakah, derived root meaning. Tazkiyah comes from the root word of zakah, yazku, tazkiyah. Okay? So all of these meanings are implied in this beautiful pillar of Islam, because when you fulfill this important pillar of Islam with the intention to fulfill your duty, it purifies you from within. Takes out that greed which is innate to human nature. Uhidaratil anfusu shuha. Human nature has greed built into it. And this greed has a purpose and function, but if it is not controlled, the situation will arise where 99% versus 1%. That's what's happening now in the world. You have 99% wealth is concentrated in their hands and 1% nothing. Where Islam makes sure that this kind of situation does not arise by instituting this great pillar of zakah, and also on top of that extra charities, sadaqat and things like that. When, you know, I was in a convocation for my daughter who Teachers Award, she graduated as a teacher. The social scientists presented a study, research study, that if the rich people were to part with 1.5% of their wealth, of savings, extra wealth, there won't be any poverty. What is the formula in Islam? 2.5%. And of course, on top of that, Islam teaches us to be charitable. Alhamdulillah, we can find fault with Muslims in so many ways, but in UK, a study in UK, result was Muslims are most charitable than any other community. More charitable. And I know, I lived in Arabia. Arabs are the most charitable people, especially in the month of Ramadan, because Ramadan teaches us to empathize with the poor and the needy and the starving. So we are, alhamdulillah, this is the beauty of this religion. Now zakah, status of zakah in Islam, it's obligatory. There is no Islam for someone who does not practice zakah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, the people in hell will be asked, what made you the denizens of fire? Why you are in the hellfire? The answer is, we were not establishing prayer and zakah. So you see how no zakah, no Islam. You cannot separate between salah and zakah. And that is the teaching lesson that Abu Bakr Siddiq taught us when the Muslims, some of the Arabs in the outlying provinces, regions, they refused to give zakah. We will pray, but we will not give zakah. So Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, you cannot remain Muslims if you refuse to give zakah. Okay, so it's very, very important. You know why it is important for us? To know that no zakah, no Islam. You cannot, there is no way. That is why salah and zakah go hand in hand in many, more than 2 dozen verses in the Quran. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ وَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ كَافِرُونَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ وَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ. Woe to the pagans. And you know, then الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, those who do not give zakah. So you see, if one does not give zakah, he belongs to the category of a mushrik actually. وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. And of course, why we don't do that? Why they don't do that? Because they don't have true faith, true conviction of meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accountability before Him. The whole concept of zakah in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us wealth. It's a trust. Wealth does not belong to us. Wealth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is given to you in trust. So it's yours only when you pay the due on it. Otherwise it becomes impure. It becomes haram. That is why zakah purifies the wealth. Zakah makes your wealth lawful for you. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in one place about those who farm and harvest, pay the due on it. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Those, there is a right, there is a due on their wealth for the poor and the needy, the destitute. So that is the haqq. That is the haqq, the right of the poor in the wealth of the rich. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, as a qadi, as a preacher, as a da'iyah, as a judge, to Yemen. Of course, he was accompanied by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu anhuma. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, you are going to the people of the book, so the first thing you preach to them is Shahada an la ilaha illallah, to accept the testimony of faith, testimony of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messengership of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَإِنْهُمْ مَتَاعُوا لِذَلِكَ. If they accept that, then tell them Allah has enjoined 5 daily prayers. Once they do that, accept that, tell them أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ افْتَرَضَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ إِلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ. That Allah has instituted, obligated, made it mandatory upon them that they should give sadaqah, charity. Because here the sadaqah means zakah actually. تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ should be taken from the rich and given to the poor. So this is the concept, the status of zakah. Zakah is the foremost pillar of Islam, second to salah. Okay? So now, how do we, of course, there are dire warnings against those who do not pay zakah. It's very, very terrible consequences awaiting them in their grave and in the next life, the hereafter grave. Of course, this wealth which they have hoarded, no zakah paid, it will be, melted, and they will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a ring out of fire in their necks. Allah will brand their backs and sides with it. So it's a very, very terrible. These are really dire warnings against for those who do not take this obligation seriously and act upon it. Now, zakah, we already mentioned that it is obligatory in Islam. Now, what is the purpose of zakah? Purpose of zakah is لِكَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. Of course, all of these pillars of Islam, all of these laws of the Sharia has tangible purposes and goals. What will be the result? And you see, the golden period of Islamic rule was the reign of pious caliphs, and there was the reign of Caliph, Umayyad Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, radiyallahu anhu. He is called Khamisul Khulafa al-Rashidin, the fifth of the most pious caliphs. He applied zakah, implemented it thoroughly, and a situation arose that there was a lot of surplus zakah money funds in the treasury. This has to be distributed, cannot stay. So officials came to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, what do we do? He said, announce, somebody want to get married, there fund. Somebody wants to have a house, there is fund. If somebody wants to have a servant, there is fund. Of course, he exhausted all this, and then still officials came, there is still surplus money. He said, buy grain and scatter it on the mountains of the Muslim state so that the birds don't starve. So you see how when zakah is implemented, sadaqah is implemented, what happens? There were no people coming forward to claim zakah because they had sufficiency. This is the beauty of this religion. Once it is implemented, there won't be any starvation in the world. لِكَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ, so that the wealth is not concentrated in a few hands. Today, 99% versus 1%. The wealth is concentrated in the hands of 1%, and 99% have nothing. This is the widening gap between the rich and the poor. The purpose of zakah is to eliminate that, and sadaqat will also complement it. And of course, there won't be any. This is how Islam solves the problem of poverty and starvation in the world. Allah's system takes into account the human nature, human weaknesses. Allah is Al-Hakim, Allah is Al-Alim. So this is a wonderful system, a beautiful system, integrated, holistic part of that program for human development, social development, making a society that will be just and compassionate. Now, I am not going to go into all the details about it's already agreed that it is established by this clear verses of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the consensus of Muslim community. It is the most important pillar in Islam after Salah. It is the foundation of Islamic economics. Wealth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man is God's vicegerent and trustee, and love of wealth embedded in human nature, and Islam encourages man to work and earn. Islam does not despise wealth, but man's ownership is limited and conditional. Okay? It establishes solidarity, social solidarity, and this rich versus poor, that situation will not be there. This jealousy, this class conflict, rivalry between rich and the poor, which is threatening the various societies now. This class war. And in Islam, there is a solution for it. So there are a lot of benefits for zakah. I have alluded to them briefly. Now let us go to applying this. Okay, the benefits of zakah are countless actually. I have a lot of points here. I don't want to go into all of this now. Now coming to the categories, what are the categories of wealth? Who pays zakah? Who is eligible to pay zakah? Majority of scholars say that, zakah is obligatory on everyone who owns it. As long as the income he has or the money, wealth he has is surplus after he has taken out his basic expenses. The basic expenses for us is the food, clothes, shelter, education expenses, and of course, vehicle. These are all considered. And of course, we need a partner, one wife. These are, as Ibn Hazm Rahimahullah said, these are the rights of a citizen in an Islamic state. He's entitled to food and shelter and medicine and clothes and vehicle and a wife. Okay, this is the basic. So if you have anything after the taking out these expenses, if there is saving, zakah is due on that saving. Now, of course, coming to the nisab, we will discuss it inshallah. Because of the volatile nature, the price of gold and silver and of course the commodities, there is a lot of, diversity of views on the minute details. But having mentioned that, I would always urge, it is always best for us to err on the side of giving rather than erring on the side of withholding. Okay? So this is, now, so zakah is due on every person who owns extra after his expenses, if what he have in his possession reaches the nisab, this is the threshold. Whether it's child, it's obligatory on the children's wealth. The guardian should take out. This is, we know Aisha radiallahu anha was taking care of the orphans of our brothers actually, and she would take out zakah from their wealth every year. So this is reported by the disciples of Aisha radiallahu anha, because these children became disciples and became great scholars, graduated in the school of Aisha radiallahu anha. Aisha radiallahu anha is a pride for Muslim women, empowerment of Muslim women. She became one of the greatest scholars after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, consulted by caliphs, judges, scholars among the Sahaba and others. And more than 200 scholars graduated, studied under Aisha, transmitting traditions and fiqh knowledge, tafsir knowledge and whatnot. So these scholars said that, who were orphans, taken care of by Aisha radiallahu anha, that she would take out every year zakah from their wealth. So Aisha radiallahu anha should know better than other imams on such issues. At least let us admit that. She would know better than Abu Hanifa rahimahullah or Imam Shafi or Imam Malik, because she is trained by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, is zakah on insane? If somebody is insane, zakah obligatory? Imam Abu Hanifa said no, but actually, according to this principle established that we learn, it is obligatory, because insane person have a guardian, somebody taking care of his wealth, he should give zakah out of it. Conditions of zakatable wealth is, it should be complete ownership and possession. You should have complete possession of that wealth. If it is not in your possession yet, zakah is not obligatory on it. And of course, it is growing, actually, potentially growing. You cannot put the money in the bank. It must be invested. If you are, of course, putting it in a dividend, where you get dividend to live, of course, zakah is due on that dividend, actually. So money should not be staying idle. It should be put into business or invested. Why? You may ask. This is because Islam wants the money to circulate, to create jobs. That is why it should not be kept as a treasure under the pillow. Money should be invested. Wealth should be producing more wealth. And Islam is a life-affirming, wealth-affirming religion that teaches us we shouldn't shun wealth. We should earn it, we should make it grow. And of course, and when it grows and we pay the due on it, it's blessed, it's purified. It will spiritually rewarding, it is beneficial for us. And of course, for zakah, it has to reach the nisab, the zakatable limit it must be. And it should be after the net expenses. Whatever you have saved after the net expenses, zakah, it should be free of debts. If you have income but you have debt, so if after deducting your debt, you have anything left, zakah applies to it. But of course, the question is, every one of us have mortgage. People buy houses. There is no way for majority of them to buy house using cash. So you buy a house, mortgage. So how do you don't pay zakah? Many times people buy a house, $1 million house or $2 million house. So what happens is, if they don't pay zakah, a farmer who makes 659 kilograms of wheat, he pays zakah, and this millionaire don't pay zakah. This is unjust and unfair. So how do we decide? Of course, in every society, there is an average. There is a poverty level, and there is a above that sufficiency level, which is, so you are allowed to have a house, that is not extra, that is not a waste, considered wasteful. If above that, you have a house, then of course zakah will apply to that. But every year zakah, if you have paid the mortgage for the year and you still have money, you have to pay zakah on it. You understand? The same way, of course, Hajj. People say, I have mortgage, I cannot go for Hajj. So nobody will go for Hajj. Maybe one person will go for Hajj from North America, because most of them, their house is mortgaged. No, once you have paid your outstanding due for the year, you should ask whether you can afford that trip for Hajj, and you can pay for the expenses of your family while you are away. So the wealth should be in your possession for one whole year. That's a very important, and that is why certain kind of investment that you have, RRSP. People ask me this question. So I'm rushing to answer it now, because you don't own it yet. It's not in your possession yet. So zakah is only due on it once you start taking out. And once you start taking out, if you are taking out for every year, after spending on your basic expenses, if there is remaining anything, zakah is due on it. This is how the best way of calculating it. So those who possess gold and silver and currencies, they should, nisab for gold is 20 misqals. 20 misqals is 85 grams of gold, pure gold. 85 grams. The gold price is so volatile. Imam Shawariullah taught us one thing, that in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the 5 awsuq, which is the wheat, how many? 653 kilograms of wheat or barley or rice or grains, zakah is due on it. So the same, the value of that and the value of the nisab of gold and silver, all of them were same. But now, because of the volatile nature of the currency, the inflation, and effect of interest, the fluctuation is such that you cannot imagine. I was looking at the price of gold in today's market, and I realized there is great disparity between The nisab of gold and silver is so different. It's really shocking. Silver, 595 gram of silver is the nisab. Okay, the value of that is 543 Canadian dollars. Whereas 85 gram of gold, what is the current value of it? 7,056 Canadian dollar. Whereas in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the nisab of gold and silver, and of course the nisab of the farm harvest, equal. They were the same. So how do we pay zakah? And that's why I said it's very important for us, if we have money saved after the expenses, it's better that we give zakah. At least we should come to a middle, some kind of latitude should be allowed. If you have something like $3,000, I would say zakah should be paid. And of course, in the case of gold, a gold jewelry, for example. You know, I come from India, and India, Pakistan people, you know, have a lot of, sometimes brides are weighed in gold jewelry. Believe me. And this is Muslims too. Na'udhu billah. So, there are people who say zakah is not due on jewelry. And zakah is due on that poor farmer who has how many grams of wheat? 653 kilograms of wheat. He pays zakah. This rich lady who is holding a lot of jewelry, gold jewelry, may be worth millions of dollars. I am not exaggerating. We say she doesn't need to pay zakah on it. It's her jewelry. That's why pure literal interpretation should not apply. Because otherwise this religion will become, there is no hikmah, there is no masalih. Our scholars teach us all of the Sharia laws are based on masalih. Tangible, purposes and objectives. Of course, the wisdom is, the wealth is not hoarded. And you can hoard wealth as jewelry. Is it allowed? If you cannot hoard wealth as grain and wheat and rice, you cannot hoard it as jewelry also. So what about those who say there is no zakah on diamonds and pearls? Somebody can convert all of his wealth into pearls and diamonds, and they don't pay zakah, and the poor farmer who has this few hundred kilograms of wheat or rice harvested, he pays zakah. This is not the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, this is now coming to the salaries we make. Of course, jewelry, there is no zakah on the jewelry if it is less than 3 ounces and a woman is wearing it. If she is wearing it, then there is no zakah on it if it is less than 3 ounces. But if she is not wearing it, zakah applies to it if it is more than 3 ounces, definitely. Okay? So that is the, when you take into account all the diversity of views on this, that is how it should be applied. And zakah is due on our salary, of course. The salary is, from the year you started your work, started earning, that's how you calculate when 1 year is complete. And you look at the whole money, income you have earned, and deduct the expenses that you have. The basic expenses, and if there is, but if you have spent all of this money on buying expensive furniture, expensive thing, this or that, and nothing is left, no saving, no zakah, no, that is not the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not the religion of Allah. Your basic expenses should be deducted. Expenses of food, cloth, shelter for yourself, and in the case of wife and children who are not independent, their expenses should be deducted too. Yes. After that, if you have anything saved, then zakah applies to it. If it is more than $3,000, I would say this is a reasonable calculation, because look at the fluctuation between the nisab of the gold and the silver and the nisab of the agricultural produce. Okay, so this is, are we exceeding the time limit? 5 minutes? Or maybe we should open questions, because there are a lot of, maybe people have questions that we should, or we should go another 5 minutes?
Because we have the kids coming over there for some snacks,
Ah.
so they might disturb.
Okay, so 5 minutes, then open for questions. Okay, so of course I have mentioned that zakah is due on gold and silver. Zakah is due on the harvest. In the case of course, we are not farmers, so I don't need to go into those details unless somebody is a farmer here. If there is no zakah on your vegetable garden at home, where you have a little bit of tomatoes and, brother Farhad has a lot of green chilies and white chilies, but if they are more than 659 kilograms, definitely zakah applies to the chili also. So, of course, there is no zakah on this kind of, basic thing that we have for our own use. There is no zakah on the merchandise. If you are a merchant and you have equipments, there is no zakah on equipment. The computer that you have, the table that you have, the chair you have, the fridge you have, or whatever, the basic equipment, no zakah on it. Zakah applies to the ware that you put out for sale. Every year, you should estimate the total ware merchandise that is on sale, that you are put out for the sale, and you calculate, estimate the fair market value at the end of the year. And zakah applies to it at the rate of 2.5%. Now, we have invested in stocks. How do we pay zakah on that? There are two types of investment. The investment, capital investment, no zakah on the capital. So if you have shares of a factory or that produces jobs, or something like even, Apple or this kind of companies, because this is a capital investment, and the dividend that you get from that share, zakah applies to it. Zakah does not apply for original capital you have invested. You understand? The same way, I know seniors sometimes, they don't know how to invest, how to put, the little money they get. If they have this GIC or whatever, guaranteed income, of course I would venture to say that is halal. You know why I say it is halal? First of all, you have to use your brain. The money that bank give you does not even cover the inflation. I remember when I first came to Canada, 25 cents would take me on TTC. Now it is $3, because I am a senior, $3, maybe. I think last time it was $3. I don't. Anyway, so inflation, bank is not giving you charity. Walakum ru'usu amwalikum, you are entitled to the original value of your money. So you put $10,000 in the bank 10 years ago, the value of that money reduced into 1,000 maybe, even less. And that's why I was called to Darul Ifta. When I was Imam at Jami Mosque, I said this interest that we get from the bank is halal. I was called to Darul Iftar to explain. I said to them, to the scholars there, Saudi Arabia has billions of dollars in the American banks, and the interest is millions, and you give it to the bank, destroy it? No. This is what happened in Bombay also. Muslims had endowments and the money was saved in the bank. The ulama said it is haram. So Christian missionaries got hold of that money and built a big missionary center using that money. And now the ulama changed the fatwa. No, it's allowed for us. Understand? So we have to understand how the economic system works. The interest that you get from the saving, it does not even cover even a half or even 1/3 of the inflation rate. So it's halal for you. If you don't want to use it, yeah, give it to your poor relatives or tuition fee for somebody. So GIC, if they have invested in GIC, do the senior people pay zakah on the capital investment or the dividend they get? They can give zakah if they want, but it's not even, it is something basic. They have to live on by it, unless they have surplus money. Yes, unless they have extra other income, zakah is not due on it, inshallah. Because you know that, تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ عَلَىٰ فُقَرَائِهِمْ. It should be taken from the rich and given to the poor. Now, with this I stop. The recipients of zakah, rich, the needy, the poor and the needy, meaning those who have nothing and those who have something but it is not sufficient for them. And then of course those who are in debt. The debt has to be incurred because of lawful, whatever work they have done, they are incurred debt, they are allowed to be given from zakah. And وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course scholars today are of the opinion, you can give from zakah at least up to 1/3, not more than that, to fi sabilillah for students who are struggling to pay their tuition fees. The education is beneficial for the community. They are eligible to receive from zakah funds if they cannot pay their fees. The same way, of course, the scholars who cannot be salaried, cannot, earn their income because they are devoted to Islamic work. Fi sabilillah comes. Of course, there are also hospitals catering to the poor. They are eligible to receive from zakah actually. Of course, that can become as fi sabilillah also the category of the poor and the needy. And of course, there are those who work to collect zakah and distribute it. They are eligible also to receive from zakah funds. I hope I have summarized, given you an introduction to it. You may have questions. You can feel free to ask me, inshallah, either here or in my website, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. For the youth who are part of the class, they can go for the potluck. I think there were some of them who were here. But definitely, inshallah, if there are any questions, you can ask the Sheikh, or you can interact with him afterwards, inshallah. Unfortunately, we have the potluck for the students, so there's a little bit of disturbance, but that's because this is our last class before Ramadan. So, are there any questions? Yeah.
I am...
Inshallah, I will speak very loud. I am very vocal.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you very much for a very different perspective and a different elaboration of the issues. I have two quick questions.
Yeah.
Number one, what is your fatwa in regards to the zakah on the qard, the loans?
On the what?
On the loans.
Qard, loans.
Loan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the fuqaha have differentiated between sa'b al-wusul and sahm al-wusul.
Yes. Yeah.
What about some of the assets, or in particular the cash, that belongs to us, however, we do not have access to that? Like, I'm in Canada, but my money is still back home, and there are restrictions in the banks and all those things. Do I need to pay zakat on such a money?
Okay.
The question for online.
Can you repeat?
Get it? So, Assalamu alaikum. He asked two questions. Can you repeat the first question? Zakat on loans. What is the fatwa on zakat on loans?
Zakah on loans, we have to differentiate between zakah, that on a loan that you have paid, if that person can pay it back anytime you demand it from him, then it is as if you have saved it with him. You should pay zakah on it. But if zakah is given to a loan is given to a person, he is not in a position to give it back right away, and you don't know when he will be able to give it back, then in that case, zakah is only due when you receive that. When he repays that loan, then for that year, first year you give, and then as long as it remains for the next year, you pay on it again, inshallah. This is the view of Imam Malik, and this is the most reasonable view ruling on this one, inshallah.
And the second question is, what about zakat on monies that you don't have access to? So the brother gave an example. He is here in Canada. His assets are somewhere else that he has lived before, but he don't have access to that. Is zakat due on that?
Yes, I can very well understand that, given the situation in India under Modi rule. So you have no access to your wealth, to your income or whatever in another country. So you don't have the possession of that wealth, because this zakah is on what you possess right now, or you are able to access it. So you are not able to access it. It's not in your possession yet. It's not in your possession, so you give zakah only when you possess it. But if it is in trust, kept in trust, and you can access it anytime you want, then of course every year zakah is due on it. Because as if you have it in trust. If that is the case, zakah is due on it. Is that?
Yeah, so I agree with you, but I'm thinking that if you have money overseas, you have access to that money. You may not have access to bring the money to Canada. You have access to the money wherever that money is. So isn't just zakat due on that money?
If the money that you have in another country and your relatives can access it, if your relatives can access it, they cannot access it, then of course zakah is not due on it. I know people who have built houses in India, they cannot sell it. They cannot sell it now. It has been there, staying there, nobody using this house for years now. How can they pay zakah on it? They cannot use it, they cannot sell it, So, Islamic system is not unjust, it is just. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la yukallifullahu nafsan illa wusaha. Allah will not place a burden on you that you are beyond your capacity, beyond your ability to discharge it, inshallah. I hope, I know he's an economist maybe. I am not a financial person. He deals with the purses and things like that. Okay, Jazakallah. Yeah. No, differentiation must be made. They have access to it over there, and maybe somebody on their behalf can access it. It is in their possession then. Although they cannot bring it here, so zakah is due there. That zakah should be paid there for the poor there. The zakah for the money you have here should be primarily given to the poor here first. Unless there is a dire emergency like earthquake or refugees in Syria, from Syria, Yemen and things like that, the priority, as long as the poor here, basic needs are taken care of, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. Any other questions? Sheikh, you're on the hot seat. Is it permissible to send your zakat to another country? I think he referenced it just now.
You know, the answer is given. Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anhu was sent to Yemen. And of course, initially years he used to give everything there. But then there was surplus. He sent to Medina. So question was asked, how come you are sending to Medina? The answer is given, this is the surplus. There is no, the need of the poor there is taken care of. So the same applies to here. If, of course, our ulama now has also given priorities. If there is millions starving outside, and there is no such starvation in Canada or USA, of course there are some people starving here. We should look out for them and give, but not everybody need to give here, because there is still, you know, government takes care of most of the basic needs. But if on top of that there are some poor who need assistance, they should be given, but if surplus should be allocated to more deserving places, inshallah. Of course, we have a lot of millions of refugees in the world. Most of them are Muslims. They deserve zakah. And that is the preferred ruling of the eminent scholars now, given the dire situation in Syria, in Yemen, and other countries. Rohingya, they have nothing, basically. So we need to take into account those, people who are in desperate situations.
Can zakat be given to non-Muslims living in a country like Canada where the government may not be taking care of them in the proper way, like the indigenous people, for example?
Zakah cannot be given to non-Muslims unless they are inclining towards Islam. If giving them zakah will incline them to Islam, then of course you can give. But of course, priority number one is Muslim actually. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, those whose heart have to be reconciled. The scholars say that this clause doesn't remain now. That's why Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, no more giving to Mu'allafatul Qulub now. But situation, the fatwa can change in a situation like Canada where you have non-Muslims who are ready to convert to Islam, but they will be thrown out of their home. You can help them from zakah definitely. Or they are new Muslims who have nothing, who have been out of their family, thrown out. Of course, Mu'allafatul Qulub, they also come. They may not be extremely poor, but they come in the category of Mu'allafatul Qulub, those whose heart have to be reconciled. And of course, indigenous people, if they are leaders, people will follow them. If there is a hope that by inclining them towards Islam, by giving zakah, from zakah, it can work, of course the ruling is there. There is a ruling given. Fatwa changes according to time and place. And that's why I am not saying that there is a hard and fast rule here. So there are situations where it can be, yes, but the general rule is, zakah is given primarily to the poor Muslims, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. So inshallah we will close it here, and if you have any questions you can ask the Sheikh. I think we may have some snacks. If we still have some, you can help yourself to it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Let me make dua kafaratul majlis. You have a question? You raise your hand. I cannot hear it. I am not like Sheikh.
Yeah, so he's asking that you said you have to pay zakat on the dividend. But what if your dividend automatically gets reinvested?
Surely. Every year you look for the dividend and calculate the dividend and pay zakah on it. You cannot excuse yourself by saying it is automatically reinvested. No. Yes. Okay, this. What?
The gain that you get on your shares, do you pay zakat on that?
Yes, definitely. But the shares are different shares. If it is share, buy and sell, that is merchandise. Zakah is due on the value of the share plus the gain that you get, plus the dividend. Because merchandise, zakah is due on the merchandise. So there are shares which are not invested, you just to sell. This, what you call, what is the term used for that? Huh? Huh? Yeah, trading shares. Shares that are traded on the market. Shares that are traded, then the zakah applies, the same principle apply, merchandise, because it's a merchandise. The same way you have houses built and it's on sale. The zakah is due on the houses that you have put on sale like merchandise. But if you have a house that you are renting out, then zakah is only due on the rental income that you get, deducting the expenses every year. Okay, so well, the reinvested, actually, that is why it is better for us to err on the side of giving than err on side of withholding. So we should consider it, otherwise this person will never pay any zakah. Because as soon as you get the dividend, you reinvest it. It's capital, it's capital, it's capital. So what will happen is you will have people like Trump dominating the world, and you and I will be beggars. They will invest. They will find a loophole in the tax system also, so that they don't end up paying any tax, no zakah, no tax, and then this is no good. Okay, so it's better to err on the side of giving than to err on the side of withholding zakah, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair.
Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Why we are reading this? Expiate for whatever mistakes we have made. We may have made some mistakes. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Glory and praise be to you, Allah. We bear witness there is no God but you. We ask forgiveness of you and return to you in repentance. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah, as you know, Sheikh Ahmad Kutty has a book on Ramadan and fasting. We're selling it for $10. So, if you would like to read up more on fasting in detail, we have the book for $10. Jazakumullah khair.